Hi guys, the Notting Hill Carnival is a huge event that takes place over 3 days around the area of Notting Hill in London. It's a huge event, it attracts 2 million people annually, and it's a celebration of Caribbean culture in London. Music, food and events. Now, there are issues around policing, crowd control and crime because so many people are concentrated into such a small area, and it's very difficult to police this type of carnival. Now, the right wing want it banned. And Mike Graham wants to go a step further in banning it because he doesn't believe it's British. Have a listen to this.
The problem is that, as I said, it's literally licensed criminality. And for the best part of sort of 72 hours, London's police force is completely and utterly wrapped up in dealing with that. So it's a great weekend to be a burglar because there's no police anywhere near South London, for example. You don't have to worry about that. If you want to go anywhere near and rob anybody down sort of in North London, that's going to be fine too because they're all at Notting Hill. The whole thing is a complete disaster. And they're all terrified of saying this thing is a waste of space, it creates criminality, it encourages people to fight the police, and it should be shut down because, quite frankly, it's not even British. And at the end of the day, nobody will say that. The Notting Hill Carnival is not British. There you go, I've said it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Before I get to this point, how do police stop burglaries? Okay. And if somebody is robbed on the street, the police are not going to stop that. Okay, but let's park that for a moment. So he's describing a cultural event taking place in London as not British. What is his definition of British? Because if we remember, why are so many Caribbean people in Britain? Why are they in London? Well, after World War II, the British Empire reached out to its colonies and said, please come to Britain, please come to the UK to help us rebuild after the war. And so many people came. They worked in construction, they worked in the NHS, they worked in the civil service, they worked in different aspects of the economy. They were invited, they were told, please come here to help us rebuild our country. And remember, these were parts of the empire, something that Talk TV likes to celebrate from time to time. The empire was wonderful. So you invited people who were part of the empire to come to Britain and rebuild the country. Now, some of the right wing wanted them to leave immediately after that happened, but people didn't leave. They stayed. They put down roots. They had families. Those families had kids. Those kids had kids. And multiple generations since World War II have lived in the UK. But they still have their Caribbean roots. And they like to celebrate their Caribbean roots. But these are people celebrating something that was part of the British Empire. So suddenly, all of a sudden, the right wing say, well, these people are not British, or this event is not British. I have to be careful there. This event is not British. How is it not British? The Caribbean countries used to be part of the British Empire. You invited these people over. They rebuilt Britain. They worked. They put down roots. They paid their way. They paid their taxes. They contributed. They had families. Those families had families. And they maintain part of their culture. Isn't what part of the British imperial culture? I don't know if Mike Graham also criticizes St. Patrick's Day parades, because this is pretty much the same thing. If somebody gets robbed during a St. Patrick's Day parade, should that mean that it should be shut down, that St. Patrick's Day parade should be cancelled? Well, because it's not British, even though Ireland was part of the British Empire, and of course, people who claim Irish ancestry came over when Ireland was part of the British Empire. And they brought part of their culture with them, the culture of celebrating St. Patrick's Day. Is that British? Or do they get that cancelled as well? For the people who are always banging on about free speech, they like to cancel things they don't like for some reason. Now, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but it's strange that he's picking on the Caribbean people and saying that their event is not British. If this was Chinese, or if this was Japanese, or if this was another country that had not been part of the British Empire, then you could make an argument, say, this isn't. You couldn't even say it with the Americans because that used to be part of the empire as well, but in a limited and specific way. But you could at least try and point to something outside the empire and say, well, this event shouldn't be celebrated here because it's not British. But these are people who were invited over while their countries were still part of the British Empire, to rebuild the United Kingdom, and the thanks they get from Mike Graham is, well, your event isn't even British. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.